Australia Overnight, the weekend edition with Pat Panetta. Now, when it comes to skill migration, we need more tradies, don't we? Of course, it's obvious when we look at the housing shortage and the ambitious plan from the government to build 1.2 million affordable homes over the next 5 years. So we need the resources and the people to do this, to fast track it into the system. But the Jobs and Skills Australia, JSA, the draft lift of priority migrant skills include yoga instructors, dog handlers, but not tradies. So how did the JSA get it so wrong? To help explain this, we're joined by a migration and immigration expert. Melanie Macfarlane is on the line. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Pat.
Hello there. Now, tell me a bit about this story throughout the week. So the JSA obviously sort of evaluate what we need and what we don't need when it comes to skilled labour, and yoga instructors and dog handlers seem to be higher than the tradies, and it's annoyed, especially people in the building industry.
Yes, and I can understand why with the housing crisis in Australia. It is ridiculous, isn't it? The thing is, what happens here is that it's pure and simply data scraping. So this is a hangover from the previous National Skills Commission, where they obtain that data from trawling through job websites and other and job adverts in general to see where the vacancies lie. But it's not an actual industry consultation speaking to the employers who need to have those questions asked.
Yes, there you are. It's an example of statistics that that can lie to you sometimes, or even I hear you say that AI. So you've got sort of this computer-generated system, as you say, scraping data. The data's been pumped through to somebody, and they've just looked at a page on the paper, but not spoken to real life people to understand the issue more deeply.
That's right, exactly. Yes, it is. It's really problematic because if you don't speak to the employers and you don't ask the right questions, you don't talk to the chambers of commerce and so on. And believe it or not, there are some bureaucratic protocols in place that actually prevent Jobs and Skills Australia from just getting on the phone. So there is a consultation process that's been in place and has closed off. So in fact, those lists we're seeing are not the final lists. Right. And they're waiting to go through the consultations to actually see what those are. But there's still more that lies behind all of this, actually.
Right. So to be fair, this is stage one, and it'll get better from here. You know, we're going to work out that we need tradies more than yoga instructors. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. We very much hope so. Because if we're relying on, for example, if we're relying on job vacancies, it may not be the right question to ask, because you may have various employers. For example, you may have a company that owns, let's say, 10 restaurants, and every single one of them is managed by a restaurant manager who's on actually a temporary migrant visa, so a sponsored visa. So they're going to say, no, we don't have any vacancies, we're fine. But the reality is the question should be, do you have temporary or permanent residents in those jobs? And if that were the case, and if that data were then accumulated, then it would be a very different story.
How interesting. There you go. They're asking the wrong question, and the data, you explained that perfectly. So who's to blame for this then? You said they can't even, Job Skills Australia can't contact various chambers of commerce because of some sort of protocol. So who's to blame? Why have we had this? Why have we got this result?
Well, the thing is, I think it is actually these protocols that they have in place where they can't just pick up the phone to someone and they don't have the right numbers and what have you. They have to go through a formal consultation process in order to do it. And this doesn't seem to be handled previously when it was with the National Skills Commission. So Job Skills Australia have come along. They've been looking through all of this data. It doesn't really make sense to them, nor to them, I'm sure, when they look at yoga trainers, suddenly yoga teachers being up there on the list. So therefore, this consultation has been put out. So we very much hope that, all of the associations and industry bodies will have put in their submissions. We ourselves, as a migration agency, have asked all our employers to put in their own submissions, because that's really important, that a very well-rounded view of what the real, where the real vacancies are, where the real skill shortages are, is formed.
Australia Overnight, we're chatting with Melanie Macfarlane, an immigration expert. The red tape, that's the problem. So back to the housing sector, that's one of the problems that's slowing it all down, that we can't sort of process permits quick enough to start building. So this is another example of red tape slowing down another process to get the skilled labour into the system.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I'll give you another example, actually, and that is international students, because right now there's a big cull of international students in order to bring down immigration numbers prior to next year's election. It's very political because of purportedly the housing crisis and so on. But, we've got international students who can study in trades, and they're already working. As soon as they're studying, they can be working on houses and building and so on. And then we've just had a change to the graduate visa, which means that for those students who are over the age of 35, can no longer apply to work for that graduate visa. Yes. After they've completed their studies. So that's another issue. It feels like there's a lot of hurdles that ironically are being put in place just as we're really facing this crisis, and we could really have some good solutions put in place. I hope this consultation process will be successful, and then we'll see that the occupation lists will actually change to represent what they should do, and we can just get on with the job and bring in the right people.
You mentioned it's getting very political now with the migration policy, and you're a migration agency. So is it frustrating to you? Is the narrative or is the focus not understanding the value of migration and what it brings to our country and how it adds value? Do you think that it's sort of got too political and that message is being lost?
Yeah, to be honest, Pat, I do. I mean, the fact is the migration strategy that was released by the federal government back in December last year, it actually it celebrates the migration review. Prior to that, celebrates migrants and talks about how important they are and how fundamental they are to economic prosperity in Australia. But the issue is because it's becoming so political, that message is totally being lost. And what we're having is international students, for example, are being picked on, if you like, because they're the easiest way of bringing down immigration numbers. I mean, skilled migration numbers have changed slightly, but it's those temporary visa numbers that need to be brought down, which actually in itself is a misnomer, because that net overseas migration figure is unnecessarily, it's inflated at the moment for different reasons. And there's a great study by Australian National University actually that's just shown why we shouldn't be too worried about it.
Is that the phrase or the part that got Peter Dutton unstuck with his numbers? It's net overseas migration. When you start thinking about the flow in and out, and you dig deeper, both sides of politics, did that sort of make the numbers a little sort of wobbly because of this net overseas migration that you refer to?
That's exactly right. He wasn't actually able to put his finger on exactly what that number should be, whereas the current government have done so. He was more about bringing numbers down for permanent migration, which in itself is also unrealistic because it will just blow out bridging visas for the number of applications that there are in Australia. For people just sit on visas for a long time. But yes, that figure is it's an important one because it, as you say yourself, it's showing the people coming in and out of the country. But the main issue is that not enough people have departed Australia over these last few years. So more Australians are actually staying in Australia since COVID, and not so many leaving. So that's why those numbers look more inflated. Plus, you've got the backlog of people coming into Australia who were shut out, during COVID. So obviously that's going to mean a large number coming in. But in fact, it's the numbers who are not leaving who are Australians.
I see.
That raises that figure. So it's very interesting. It's fascinating, actually.
133693 for our listeners, Melanie, if they want to join the conversation. Immigration expert on Australia Overnight. So the availability of homes. So we get stories, and I think this is more maybe perception, because I think somebody phoned up and said when you went to the foreign board that sort of ticks off who buys homes and who doesn't from overseas, this is not happening as much as people might think it is, but you go to an auction and you can't purchase the home because a foreign buyer is cashed up and they're purchasing the home, and you miss out. Is this sort of policy from the government going to fix that sort of stuff by cutting immigration and migration?
To be honest, no, that's not going to fix it at all, because international students, that's the main way that they're looking at bringing down these immigration figures at the moment. And international students come in, and the majority of them don't stay in Australia. They just come in for a period of time to study, and they share houses, they share apartments, and of course they go into purpose-built student accommodation, which, more and more of which is being built to a really high standard actually in Australia. So it's not going to. So the answer is actually no. It's not going to solve that problem at all. It's not going to make the slightest bit of difference.
How interesting. I guess, when you cast a simple eye over it, I guess you think, less people here, more homes available to rent and students, but it's just not that simple, is it, Melanie?
No, it's not. And I'm no expert in housing, but I know there's a really good report by I was about to say that. Yeah, I'm just trying to remember the report on housing. It's the Property Commission. That's right. They've actually put out a very good report which shows that international students are not to blame at all, and they've got some really good facts and figures in there to show this. And of course, as we know, this has been an age-old issue for about building up for the last 30 years. Yes. That successive governments have just not gone on top of. Perhaps they've spent more on defence instead. Who knows?
Yeah. So how do we fix it? There is this housing, the pressure on homes and rents are going up. Something has to be done. So what do we do?
Well, it's always about balance, isn't it? I mean, it's clear that we need to get young Australians into trades as well. So I think there definitely needs to be a focus on training and encouragement for young kids to do this, including in the regional areas. For example, you want to have you want to have more infrastructure in regional areas. Well, it would be good for TAFEs, for example, to open up more courses that are available for both international students and for local students too, to encourage them to study there, to maybe remain there, to help build housing that's needed in those areas. So I think it is a balance of the training of the young Australians and encouragement to work in those careers. I mean, my goodness, you can make a lot of money running your own business as a tradie, and then I think having a balance of the international students coming in and perhaps looking at what there used to be a trade training visa, which was existed to bring people from overseas to do a kind of apprenticeship here and help to build at the same time. So I think a mixture of all of this is needs to be looked at, actually, Pat. Okay,
wonderful. And just sort of back to our sort of original sort of premise there with this, back to the yoga instructors and the dog handlers. So I just want to, from your point of view, so does that mean you being an agency, you've got people overseas who want to come and sort of work and study here? They're training to be yoga teachers in their various countries, and then they come to you and say, "Well, I've now got my certificate, Melanie. I can come to Australia." Is that the consequence of this sort of thing?
Well, they would. I mean, they are. If they're on a list, then they can be sponsored. Right. Yes, it does allow them to be sponsored and then ultimately get permanent residence that way. So these lists have to be carefully looked at to see that we've got the proper skill shortage occupations on there, and those are the people who will then ultimately be able to get permanent residence through employer sponsorship.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Melanie. It's sort of, this is a program where we invite listeners, a talkback program. So we've started the discussion and interested to hear what our listeners think, if they can add value on that number, 133693. We'd love to hear from our audience. You have a wonderful morning, and thanks for your time on Australia Overnight. Melanie Macfarlane, our immigration expert this morning on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.